River Nile, the richest river in Africa. The River Nile is the longest river in the world, stretching over 6,695 kilometers or 4,160 miles from its source in Burundi to its delta on the Mediterranean Sea. In Egypt, it flows through 11 countries, which are Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Kenya, Egypt. The River Nile is considered the richest river in Africa, and it is one of the most iconic and historically significant rivers in the world. This topic will state the reason why Nile is considered the richest river in Africa. Here are some of the reasons why River Nile is considered the richest river in Africa. 1. The longest river in Africa. The longest river in the Africa is the River Nile, stretching approximately 6,695 kilometers or 4,160 miles from its source in Burundi to its delta on the Mediterranean Sea. In Egypt, River Nile flows through 11 countries: Burundi, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Kenya, and Egypt. The source or River Nile is Lake Victoria in Tanzania for the White Nile and Lake Tana in Ethiopia for the Blue Nile. River Nile has two main tributaries. The White Nile and the Blue Nile meet near Khartoum, Sudan. The river flows northward with an average discharge of 2,830 cubic meters per second. The River Nile is an important transportation route with cargo and passenger boats. 2. River Nile is the populated river basin. The Nile River Basin is indeed the most populated river basin in the world, with over 200 million people relying on it for their livelihood. Here is a breakdown of the population distribution. In Egypt, 95 million people, that is about 50% of the basin population, rely on River Nile. Ethiopia, 40 million people, 20% of the basin's population rely on River Nile. Democratic Republic of the Congo, 20 million people, 10% of the basin's population depend on River Nile. Uganda, 15 million people, 7.5% of the basin's population. Sudan, 10 million people, about 5% of the basin's population. South Sudan, 5 million people, 2.5% of the basin's population. Kenya, 3 million people, 1.5% of the basin's population. Tanzania, 2 million people, 1% of the basin's population. Rwanda, 1.5 million people, 0.75% of the basin's population. Burundi, 1 million people, 0.5% of the basin's population. The Nile Basin covers about 10% of the African continent, spanning across 11 countries. The population density varies greatly, with some areas being highly urbanized like Cairo in Egypt, and others being rural and agricultural. Ancient Egyptian crops such as grains, emmer, wheat, barley, and flax, fruits such as dates, figs, and grapes, vegetables such as beans, lentils, and onions. Modern-day crops like cotton, which is Egypt's main cash crop, sugarcane, maize or corn, wheat, rice, vegetables, including tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplants. Fruits such as oranges, mangoes, and bananas. Egypt is self-sufficient in food production thanks to the Nile. The Nile Basin produces over 100 million tons of crops annually. Agricultural exports from the Nile Basin countries exceed $10 billion annually. The Nile's waters support irrigation for over 10 million hectares of land. Irrigation canals, dams, and reservoirs distribute the Nile's waters to farms and fields. The Nile's agricultural abundance has been the backbone of civilizations for millennia, supporting food security, economic growth, population growth, cultural development. The Nile's waters continue to nourish and sustain millions of people, making it one of the most agriculturally abundant rivers in the world. 4. River Nile aids fishing. The Nile River's fishing industry is a significant sector. The Nile's waters are home to over 1,000 species of fish, with many being important food sources for millions of people. Nile River is a source of fish production with annual catch of over 1 million tons of fish. The Nile Rivers provides a fishing community to over 10 million people, depending on the Nile's fish resources for food and income. Fish is a vital source of protein for many communities. Commercial fisheries, such as Nile tilapia, Nile perch, and catfish, are highly prized species. The River Nile is an export market to Europe, Middle East, and Asia. The River Nile provides small-scale fishing operations using traditional methods. It is an important source of income for rural communities. The Nile River provides food security, livelihoods for millions, local economies, cultural heritage, or fishing traditions and practices. The Nile's fishing industry is a vital component of the region's food system, and economy. 5. River Nile provides job opportunities. The Nile's job creation potential is vast, with opportunities for skilled and unskilled labor, entrepreneurship, and small business development, innovation and technology adoption, regional economic integration and cooperation. By harnessing the Nile's potential, we can create a brighter future for millions of people. 6. Water supply. The Nile River is a vital source of water supply for millions of people. The Nile provides drinking water for over 100 million people. Major cities like Cairo, Alexandria, and Khartoum. The Nile's waters support industrial processes like textiles, paper, and food processing. Cooling systems for power plants and factories. The River Nile has several major dams and reservoirs, including Lake Nasser in Egypt and Sudan, Lake Tana in Ethiopia, Sud wetlands in South Sudan. 7. Transportation. The Nile River has played a vital role in transportation for thousands of years. River Nile is connected to ancient civilizations like Egypt, Nubia, and Axum to the Mediterranean. The river allows for cargo transportation. Cargo ships carry goods like grains, wheat, corn, fruits, dates, citrus, vegetables, potatoes, onions, fuel, petroleum products, construction materials, cement, steel. River Nile aids passenger transportation. Passenger boats and ferries transport millions of people annually, connecting cities, towns, and villages. The Nile has several navigation channels, including the Suez Canal connecting the Nile to the Red Sea, the White Nile River connecting Uganda to South Sudan, the Blue Nile River connecting Ethiopia to Sudan. Transportation on the Nile supports trade and commerce, generates revenue for local economies, creates jobs, and stimulates economic growth. 8. The Nile River provides hydroelectric power. The Nile River's hydroelectric power potential is immense. The river's flow and elevation changes create ideal conditions for hydroelectric power generation. Over 15,000 megawatts of hydroelectric power capacity is installed along the Nile. The Nile's hydroelectric power plants generate over 60 billion kHa, or kilowatt hours, of electricity annually. The Nile River's hydroelectric power provides renewable energy source, low operating costs, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, supports industrial development and economic growth. In conclusion, the River Nile water supply is crucial for human consumption, food security, economic development, energy generation, ecosystem health. River Nile is the lifeblood of the region's economy. Thanks for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more.